Good morning, everybody. Everything new under the sun. Looking at the four horsemen of the apocalypse, the seven seals of Revelation 6, and what we see coming, and what we think this is the build up to, the run up to, um, the getting ready for, the conditioning for, is the seven seals, and more specifically, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, the first four seals, which are the white horse given a crown and going out conquering. The red horse, peace being removed, violence breaks out, and this one has a sword. The black horse, which is the balance scales, huge inflation, economic collapse, and the oil and the wine spared. And then the pale horse, where death has Hades with them, a quarter of the earth killed with sword, famine, death, and beasts. Now, are we coming upon that time? Do we see something of a white horse with a corona or crown going out to conquer? That's interesting. And also the peace being removed from the world. Is the peace being removed? Violence, is that breaking out? We're looking at World War III, ahead of us. And so certainly war is breaking out. And then we have this idea of this economic collapse. And we're seeing that all around us, triggered by initially the pandemic, the restrictions, the shutdown of the world, and supply chains are falling down. Inflation is massively increasing right now. We ain't seen nothing yet, but it's increasing significantly. And that's kind of the biggest thing that we're seeing right now, really the recognition that the world economy is under significant threat. And then we have this idea of famine, which comes after food inflation, because as food gets more pricey, of course, there's a famine increases in the world because people can't afford the food or enough food. And so we see this famine, death, and beasts. And now, just in the recent video yesterday, we're talking about avian flu. So is there death coming from the beasts? Absolutely, there is. Let's take a look at a couple news articles for the day, and we'll bring this around. We see all these things happening in front of us. This is kind of the big news. The petrodollar cracks. Saudi Arabia considers accepting the yuan, the Chinese yuan, for Chinese oil sales. So we had this idea of the world reserve currency, the petrodollar, the U.S. dollar, backed by oil effectively. And this was the agreement for protection of Saudi Arabia by the United States. And this is breaking down as sanctions on Russia occur. Russia is forced to look for alternative ways to sell its oil. Of course, we know it's now selling its oil to China. And it's not going to sell its oil to China in U.S. dollars. That would just be supporting U.S. hegemony. So they're getting around the U.S. dollar and selling the oil to China directly. Well, now Saudi Arabia wants to sell oil to China directly and get past the selling of oil in U.S. dollars. As again, the petrodollar is collapsing. And when the petrodollar collapses, this is going to mean the end of the U.S. And the world economic system as we know it, ruled by the United States and the U.S. dollar. Saudi Arabia is in active talks with Beijing to price some of its oil sales to China in the yuan, a move that could cripple not only the petrodollar's dominance of the global petroleum market, something which Zoltar Pazar predicted in his last note, and mark another shift in by the world's top crude exporter toward Asia, it says, but also a move aimed squarely at the heart of the U.S. financial system, which has taken advantage of the dollar's reserve status by printing as much dollars as it needs to fund government spending. The U.S. is the only country in the world, really, that can print money out of thin air and there be no repercussion, other than the ultimate collapse of the currency, because you're grinding the value of your dollar into the ground. And the world is shifting. The world doesn't want this anymore. And as we economically sanction countries like Russia, they are now quickly and actively going to create other parallel economic systems so they don't have to rely on the U.S. And this is ultimately bad for the U.S. because it tears them down. The U.S. shouldn't be doing this if they want to keep their monetary status, but that's what's happening. A world economy braces for supply chain chaos. This is, by the way, a recent article. This is March 16th, 2022. Why? Well, because COVID is quote unquote spiking in China, and China is locking down again because of Omicron. It spread so quickly they can't control it, yet they are trying to go with zero COVID. Global economy is in disarray as the war in Ukraine unleashed a commodity shock with increasing risks and stagflation. Adding to the turmoil is an outbreak of COVID-19 in China, which may unleash another supply chain crisis. Remember, most of the products you see in your Walmarts, your even your Canadian Tires, your any store, especially discount stores, that all comes from China. Most things, even if they're not completely made in China, the components come from China. Your cell phones and all these sorts of things, all sorts of electronics made in China. So when China shuts itself down because of COVID, that means the supply chain is going to be absolutely disrupted. News from China over the last day shows an outbreak of the highly contagious Omicron, which has infected more than 5,000 people, the most since the early days of the pandemic in 2020. China's zero-tolerance approach has shuttered factories, placed some 51 million people in some form of lockdown. So we're going to lockdown again in China, and supply chains are in trouble there. I've said it before, if you haven't ordered what product you want off Amazon, which is going to come from China most likely, if you haven't ordered it yet, it may be getting to be too late. Shipping times are increasing, shipping prices are increasing, and just pure product availability is decreasing. What they have now is basically the supplies left in the warehouses on the North American side. Once they start having to refill those orders from China, things will get very short, very fast. What's happening in Russia is Russia has moved away from the U.S. dollar. Well, Russians are buying gold. So Russia's central bank announced that it will suspend gold purchases from banks due to overwhelming demand from households. There was a levy, a tax, a value-added tax on buying gold, and that was preventing people from buying gold. Currently, households' demand for physical gold has increased, driven in particular by the abolition of value-added tax on these operations. So now you can get your gold and silver at par, with the ruble. So people are exchanging their rubles for gold and silver because they know that hyperinflation is coming in Russia. Although Russia has kind of sort of went back to a gold standard. I don't know if that's going to fully prevent inflation in the ruble. Because there's lots of other factors, but people are going quickly to gold and silver as a store of value, and in this time, the best thing you can do, apart from finding Jesus Christ and having faith in Jesus Christ and relying on Him ultimately for your needs and your sustainment, is to have our hard assets, because at the end of the day, hard assets are going to be valuable. They're going to be worth something in trade and barter. For selling, etc., or just for personal use. Hard assets are always going to hold value, and so that includes gold and silver, which are more liquid than kind of a shovel or a rake or these sorts of things. But hard assets of any sort, even your house, if paid off, is a good way to kind of get through an economic change. All right, did you hear this? Iran has struck a U.S. consulate in Iraq, and Iran is waking up under cover of the Ukrainian war, and news media isn't really covering this. This is CNN, but it says Iran's strike on Iraq puts U.S. in awkward position among nuclear talks. So, of course, the nuclear talks are going on with U.S., Iran, and Israel right now, and of course, they don't want to condemn Iran because they don't want to upset the discussions about the nuclear deal. And Iran has come out and said, and it says it on their Press TV website, that they are looking to pull back on any of the restrictions by it. They want to start increasing the purity of the uranium. And so they're pulling back on any sort of commitment in the nuclear deal. And the U.S. is in trouble now. With Biden, they don't have a lot of strength or a pull in Iran because Biden looks weak. The U.S. looks weak. It doesn't look like they're going to do anything. So Iran knows that, and they don't care. They're not going to make any deal other than something that looks nice and maybe sign something, but doesn't really have any teeth to it. And Iran is going out there and already striking U.S. targets in Iraq. And but what does the U.S. want to do? They're just ignoring it. They want to get a peace. They want to get a nuclear deal done with Iran, just to say they've done something. So this one's interesting as a final look towards the third temple, because we know this is coming in. The carrot at the end of the stick that the Antichrist is going to provide Israel in terms of creating a peace deal is that Israel will be able to rebuild their third temple. Now, this is an Israeli non-governmental organization, and they're minting silver coins to fund what? The third temple for the nations. So this is a very interesting thing, and this has been done before, of course, in other situations. But the Mikdash Temple Educational Center, in conjunction with Rabbi Hillel Weiss, the former spokesman for the Sanhedrin, has minted a silver coin to promote a practical effort to establish the third temple. Now, the idea is that it's going to raise money. The coin contains 10 grams of pure silver, represents 3 times the amount of the biblical silver half shekel that was donated by every Jewish male to finance daily operations of the temple. So this is something that has happened before, has been required before, for every Jewish male to basically fund the upkeep of the temple. Now they're using it as a fund to create the third temple. So when they get the go-ahead, they're going to be fully monetized. They're going to have lots of money. And, of course, the Temple Institute, among others, have all the implements and clothing and training done with the Levitical priests to initiate sacrifices in the third temple. Weiss emphasized that minting of coin was timed to coincide with the beginning of the Hebrew month Adar, when these coins were collected historically for the temple. It says, donating the annual silver half shekel is incumbent upon Jews, but this is not just a Jewish project. Remember, this is for the whole world. So this is fascinating as they bring the whole world into it. The concept of money in the world and all of the basis of commerce has been lost, he said. Commerce is now... where do we go now? Commerce is how people interact. The ads keep loading. Pain in the neck. Commerce is how people interact. The 70 nations would come to the temple. The world will come to the temple in Jerusalem on the pilgrim festivals and interact. They would express their dedication to the common values of the 7 Noahide laws. And I think this is what they're going to all agree to. When the Antichrist comes in, he's going to bring the world to the Temple Mount. They're going to have the 3 monotheistic religions there. And everybody, in the name of peace and security, are going to agree to the 7 Noahide laws, because this is something that kind of is the basis in a sort of a way for all the 3 monotheistic religions. So very interesting. Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. So this would establish the basis for healthy commerce if there are no shared values. If one country allows theft or lawlessness or the spilling of blood, then there can be no commerce. So the world is going to come together under this, and there's going to be a one world religion effectively, and everybody is going to come to agreement outside of those who are born again of Jesus Christ, because we know that this is a false religion and not what the Lord wants. But the world will come together, and the world will come and worship at the Temple Mount, even in the third temple, because that's what the Antichrist wants to do. He wants to sit on the throne in the third temple as God and be worshipped by everybody in the world as they come together under the common values of the 7 Noahide laws. And this is coming, and they're saying it, they're admitting it, they're getting ready, they're funding the development of, or they're funding the future construction of the third temple in Israel, and there's many organizations doing it. So I'll leave it there. Fascinating things. We're getting very, very close to this. Thanks for watching, folks. I'll leave it there, and we'll see you, as always, in the next video.